Be cautious about what you believe. These images and stories are completely false. I'm not a witness or a named witness in connection with any of Epstein's crimes. My name has never appeared in court documents, depositions, victim statements, or FBI interviews surrounding the Epstein matter. I have never had any knowledge of Epstein's abuse of his victims. I was never involved in any capacity. I was not a participant, was never on Epstein's plane, and never visited his private island.
All right, people, welcome back to Blue Line Media. Trump's entire political world ran on one rule: absolute loyalty. No talking, no cooperating, no giving investigators anything ever. Every staffer, ally, and advisor was expected to protect him unconditionally, no matter what. And for an astonishingly long time, the wall held. Person after person marched into legal crosshairs and refused to crack. They stonewalled. They deflected. They claimed memory lapses over events so obvious a child could recall them.
Well, Mrs. Trump called on Congress to allow the Epstein survivors to speak during a public hearing and allow their stories to be entered into the congressional record. Joining me now to discuss this is Dr. Lauren Wright. She's a political science professor at Princeton University. Dr. Wright, thank you so much for being with me here on the Fox Local Stream.
Hey, Marla, thank you.
My first question is, where did this come from? As in timing, why now, why today?
You know, I'm consuming the same reporting as everyone else on that. I don't have particular insight into the timing, but I do know that Mrs. Trump is pretty shrewd when it comes to rumors about her, media stories about her, something either about to come out or clearly she vaguely references these documents.
The fortress of silence stood firm, protecting the king inside. But then something fractured, something nobody in Trump's meticulously controlled universe ever prepared for. Because the person who finally cracked open a door that was supposed to remain forever sealed was not a bitter ex-employee nursing a grudge. It was not a political rival sharpening knives in the dark. It was not even a lawyer who flipped under the crushing weight of their own criminal exposure.
Melania Trump has, in recent weeks, aggressively, along with her team, sought retractions and clarifications on stories in the press that have suggested she might have been closer to Epstein or more intimately involved in any aspects of his life or connections even with her husband or with other powerful men than had been publicly reported. Today, she took that step further, noting that she would continue to be seeking those retractions and calling the efforts to somehow link her to Epstein defamatory.
The individual whose carefully chosen words are now locked into the evidentiary foundation of one of the most explosive federal cases in modern American history is Melania, his wife. The woman whose entire public existence has been crafted with surgical precision to float above the chaos, untouchable and unknowable. Her sworn deposition testimony, buried under seal for months and recently made public, describes something that sounds like it was ripped from a spy thriller: a wall safe.
And smears and suggesting that people were trying to politically spite or attack her with those claims. But perhaps most important, and the thing that could have the longest tail out of the First Lady's remarks today, she called for Congress to have open and public hearings with Epstein's victims so that their voices might become a part of the record. There are already additional interviews and depositions set for other men connected with Epstein through the House Oversight Committee, but another round of public hearings would keep this story in the spotlight and could be a frustration for a White House that has tried very hard to turn the page on the Jeffrey Epstein scandal.
Hidden on the third floor of Trump's private residence, concealed behind a portrait. The combination, known only to the family, deliberately and explicitly placed off limits to the very lawyers scrambling to respond to a federal subpoena. This is not speculation. This is not a leak from an anonymous source with an agenda. This is her voice under oath describing a calculated decision. And when federal authorities finally obtained the legal authority to crack that safe open, what did they find?
Now is the time for Congress to act. Epstein was not alone. Several prominent male executives resigned from their powerful positions after this matter became widely politicized. Of course, this doesn't amount to guilt, but we still must work openly and transparently to uncover the truth. I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors. Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony.
Now is the time for Congress to act. Epstein was not alone. Several prominent male executives resigned from their powerful positions after this matter became widely discussed. Of course, this does not amount to guilt, but we still must work openly and transparently to uncover the truth. I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors. Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony. Each and every woman should have her day to tell her story in public if she wishes, and then her testimony should be permanently entered into the congressional record. Then and only then will we have the truth. 47 classified documents. 47 sensitive government materials sitting inside a hidden compartment that his own legal team had certified under penalty of perjury was fully searched and completely cleared. The betrayal, if you can even call it that, did not come from outside the gates. It came from the master bedroom. This revelation lands in the middle of an already volatile landscape. While the legal earth shakes beneath Trump's feet, the geopolitical stage is also burning. The stuttering peace negotiations on the other side of the world are collapsing in real time. A proposal meant to halt the devastation was put on the table, and Trump's reaction was volcanic. He did not just reject it, he publicly condemned it, calling it unbelievably weak, a piece of garbage he could not even stomach reading to the end. His own words from the Oval Office painted a picture of utter contempt. He declared the deal on life support, signaling with unmistakable clarity that the path back to full-scale combat operations is now terrifyingly wide open. The Strait of Hormuz, that slender artery of global commerce pinched between hostile shores, remains a choked and dangerous passage with profound economic shockwaves and humanitarian nightmares looming on the near horizon. The world is teetering, and at the center of the storm, the man who prides himself on absolute control is discovering that the most devastating vulnerability is the one he never saw coming. We are going to walk through every syllable of what her testimony actually reveals. We are going to dissect the legal earthquake it triggers and unpack why every single time Melania's tightly guarded private universe leaks into the harsh glare of public scrutiny, Trump does not just get embarrassed. He gets exposed in ways that carry serious legal consequences. To fully grasp the magnitude of this moment, you have to understand that this is not just a single isolated scandal. This story operates on two distinct but deeply connected tracks running parallel through the heart of Trump's situation. And if you treat them as separate incidents, you miss the entire architecture of the crisis. The first track is the cold, hard legal machinery. The unsealed deposition, the hidden compartment, the deliberate obstruction of a federal investigation. This is the track that redefines the legal jeopardy from a messy paperwork dispute into something far darker, something centered on criminal intent. The second track is older, stranger, and in many ways far more revealing about the human dysfunction at play. It is the archive of secret recordings, the tapes from 2020 that captured Melania's unguarded contempt for the very public duties she was forced to perform. Her bitter, profane complaints about Christmas decorations, her startlingly detached comments about migrant children, the catastrophic fallout with her closest confidant, and the consistent pattern of private Melania moments surfacing like unwanted revelations that refuse to stay buried. Each one inflicting damage that no amount of public relations can repair. Both tracks matter enormously. Both carry the weight of legal and personal consequence. And when you lay the sworn testimony about the hidden safe right next to the secretly recorded audio tapes, and then layer on top the recurring public difficulties every time her private world breaches containment, you do not just get a story, you get a picture of a marriage and a political partnership where the carefully maintained facade keeps crashing against a complicated reality. And every time that collision happens in full view of the cameras, Trump reacts forcefully. He seethes, he lashes out at reporters. He rushes onto television and makes statements that do not extinguish the fire. They pour gasoline on it. So let us move carefully through both tracks. Let us build the full picture from the ground up, starting with the legal development that is currently challenging his defense. The safe, the portrait, the testimony. These are the elements of the newer, more legally significant piece of the puzzle, and they carry the most immediate and devastating legal implications imaginable. When the legal analysis originally broke, walking through the freshly unsealed transcript with painstaking detail, the gravity of it became clear. Investigators read directly from the recorded exchange between investigators and the former First Lady, word for word, because the language itself is significant to prosecutors. An investigator asks a simple, direct question. Is there any location in the residence where your husband kept documents that was not accessible to staff? Her answer is direct. Yes, there is a wall safe in the third-floor private office. It is located behind the portrait. They press further. Who holds access to this vault? Only the family, she confirms. Not the housekeepers, not the attorneys, certainly not the federal agents. Just the inner circle. Then comes the critical moment. When asked whether that hidden compartment was ever accessed during the response to the federal subpoena, the legal demand that required the return of every piece of government property, her answer is clear. No, her husband stated that area was personal and off limits to the lawyers. Let that sink in. That is not a memory slip. That is not a misinterpretation. That is a sworn statement describing a direct command from Donald Trump to create a blind spot in a federal investigation. He drew a line around that portrait and declared it off limits to the legal process, and everyone followed the order. The government, armed with this testimony, eventually targeted that specific location, pried it open, and extracted 47 classified documents that had never been returned. 47 pieces of sensitive material that existed in direct, undeniable contradiction to the signed certifications submitted by his own defense team, claiming total compliance. This is not an oversight. This is not a chaotic transition team losing track of boxes. This is a hidden repository known to the family, shielded by a deliberate instruction from the target of the investigation that turned out to be filled with the very materials he swore he did not have. We need to pause on the legal significance of this because the shift in the case is serious for Trump. In the world of federal classified document prosecutions, prosecutors face two mountains to climb. They have to establish the act, meaning the physical possession of sensitive materials outside of secure channels. That part was already documented. The surveillance footage, the storage areas, the boxes, that was always damaging. But the higher challenge, the element that separates a lesser charge from a serious one, is intent. Did the subject know these undisclosed materials existed? Did they take deliberate, conscious steps to prevent the government from recovering them? Did they orchestrate a scheme to conceal, to mislead, to deceive? A sloppy paper mix-up without evidence of criminal intent is a political headache. A deliberate concealment backed by sworn testimony describing the concealment strategy, that is a felony. What Melania's deposition provides, assuming the accounts of the transcript are accurate and every legal analyst who has reviewed it says it is the evidence of intent. Trump did not just forget about a safe. According to the unsealed words of his own wife, he specifically identified that location and declared it forbidden territory. He issued a directive. He divided his residence into searchable and off-limit zones during an active federal inquiry. His spouse, sitting across from investigators, confirmed the strategy on the record. That is intent. It is the difference between a disorganized man who lost track of things and a calculating man who built a hidden repository of secrets and then concealed its existence. And here's the truly significant irony. The entire loyalty doctrine, the years of demanding that everyone around him protect the information and never cooperate, was designed exclusively to prevent this exact scenario. It was a survival mechanism. Keep the narrative sealed, deny investigators the testimony they need to connect the dots. But Melania is not a junior aide. She is the person who lives in the same residence as the target. She is the keeper of the domestic space. And in that deposition room, whatever her motivations, whether candor, self-preservation, or sheer exhaustion, she provided prosecutors with a direct path not just to a physical safe, but to evidence of a legal conspiracy. Now let us shift to the second track because the wall safe revelation did not materialize out of a vacuum. It is the latest, most legally significant development in a series of leaked private moments that stretches back years and paints a profoundly different picture of the woman behind the carefully controlled public image. The Wolkoff tapes. You remember them? They emerged in the autumn of 2020. Stephanie Winston Wolkoff, Melania's former close friend and confidant, the person privy to the unvarnished thoughts that never made it past the residence doors, released secret recordings. And what we heard was not the graceful, compassionate First Lady of the Be Best campaign. We heard a woman expressing frustration about the most symbolic of public duties. Her frustration was not reserved for political enemies. It was aimed at the trappings of the job itself. The holiday decorations she was supposed to publicly embrace, she dismissed them in private with language that was far from diplomatic. The migrant children separated at the border, the very issue her public platform was supposedly centered around. Her private comments revealed a disconnect, a detachment from the performance that completely shattered the carefully maintained persona. The backlash was immediate. Melania rushed to the official channels, posting a statement denouncing the release as self-serving from a disgruntled former insider. The White House machinery came to life, dismissing the revelations as revisionist history. But privately, inside Trump's inner circle, the reaction was intense. Trump was not merely annoyed. He was furious. Because the tapes did not just create a fleeting embarrassment. They created a permanent record, an audible, undeniable account of a woman who privately contradicted the very image her handlers had sold to the public. That recording is permanent. It sits on servers forever. Every time a new controversy erupts, the existence of that audio resurfaces, reminding the world that the public Melania and the private one are two very different presentations. The gap between the brand and the reality is significant. And every time she forgets to guard the edges, the truth emerges, and the strain has not eased with time. If anything, reports suggest a relationship under a state of constant tension. When journalists ask about Melania's whereabouts, her mood, the state of the relationship, Trump does not respond with the smooth, calm responses of a united political alliance. He becomes irritated. He gets dismissive. He responds with a sharpness that essentially confirms every rumor the question implied. One analyst noted a particular exchange where a simple inquiry about his wife triggered a response so curt, so visibly irritated that it did more damage than any investigative report ever could. He cannot hide it. The mask slips. The concept of a harmonious domestic life behind the gates is a fiction that crumbles the instant he has to defend it in real time. Connecting these tracks reveals the true nature of the situation. Look at the wall-safe testimony. Look at the Wolkoff tapes. Look at the ongoing reports of tension and the uncontrollable leaks. What starts to form is not a picture of unwavering loyalty, but a political arrangement forged in mutual strategic interest that is quietly showing signs of strain. The private frustrations captured on tape show she was not a committed believer in the public performance. The deposition shows that when placed under the legal spotlight, her words did not operate as a shield for her husband, but as a guide for his accusers. The recurring pattern of these private world revelations proves this is not a fluke. This is a defining characteristic of their dynamic. Trump has constructed an approach where silence is the ultimate currency. He demands it from the lowliest intern and the most powerful senator. Yet the person closest to his private life, the one person who shares his sanctuary, has become an ongoing source of leaks, contradictions, and now sworn evidence. The man who brands himself as the ultimate authority, the master of commanding allegiance, cannot keep his own household from revealing the information that threatens to damage him. Let us conclude with a clear-eyed look at the situation. First, the legal reality is now unambiguous. The wall-safe testimony goes directly to intent, and intent is the entire basis of the case. The disorganized paperwork defense that his team has presented to the public for months is now seriously challenged. You cannot credibly argue that the mishandling was a clumsy, unintentional error when your spouse testifies under oath that you specifically identified a hidden safe behind a painting, declared it off limits to your own legal response team, and it subsequently produced a collection of classified materials. That sequence of events does not fit the frame of an innocent mistake. It fits the frame of a deliberate concealment. The fact that this evidence comes in the sworn words of his own wife makes it extremely difficult for his lawyers to characterize as a politically motivated attack. She was not on a television panel. She was in a deposition. Her words were not opinions. They were answers to factual questions. And those answers led the FBI directly to 47 documents that were not supposed to be there. That is the foundation of a case, and it is very significant. Second, the difficulty with the loyalty doctrine is notable. Trump's entire life strategy, the approach that has kept him afloat through various crises, is failing at the most intimate level possible. The wall of silence held for so long because subordinates were motivated to maintain it. But a wife is different. A wife lives inside the perimeter. A wife sees the safe, hears the instructions, and when the moment of reckoning arrived, the inner circle provided the most significant evidence against him. This is not just a leak. It is a structural problem with the only defense mechanism he relies on. It reveals a man who demands total control, but presides over a private reality that is not fully controllable. Third, the pattern of Melania-related moments reveals a significant tension in the carefully crafted image. The Wolkoff audio captured her contradicting the White House tradition she was supposed to represent. The infamous jacket worn to a detention facility gave the world a visible contradiction to the empathy her platform was supposed to represent. The Mar-a-Lago reports expose a tense arrangement. And now legal testimony exposes a direct line of sight to potential criminal intent. Every single time the facade slips, the result is the same. The gap becomes visible. The audience sees the contradiction, and Trump reacts not with controlled restraint, but with reactive frustration, which only serves to confirm the authenticity of the revelation. Finally, the story is not over. It is accelerating. The deposition transcript being unsealed is a milestone, but it is also a doorway. The classified documents case already featured damaging evidence: surveillance footage, inventory logs, text messages, false certifications. But those are the documentary evidence of a conspiracy. What Melania provided is the direct testimony. She described a decision, a directive, a deliberate act of concealment. And since that testimony comes from within the family itself, it carries a credibility that documentary evidence alone never will. Trump will keep making his case publicly. He will keep characterizing the process as unfair, challenging the investigators, and denying the evidence. But the safe is empty now. The 47 documents are in an evidence locker, and the words of the one person he could never fully silence are etched into the court record. The portrait may still be hanging on the wall, but everyone now knows what was hiding behind it.